Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
All right, thank you. Should we wait a few minutes?
Yeah. I don't like that they say like 40 minutes after Shabbos. You never know really like what time it is.
Yeah, maybe they should put in the bulletin each week the actual time.
Yeah, I think it would be good.
I support your suggestion. That works for me too. Maybe suggest it to Ezra, or just send it right to Richard or.
Yeah. Richard will take care of it.
Yeah, good idea.
Well, actually, but it's also you need to tell David Schwartz because he's the one who writes that in the email on Friday.
Okay, right.
So, or you can put it in the WhatsApp group that I created for HIR. So there's a multiple amount of possibilities.
Yeah, well, better if we put the responsibility on someone else, I always say.
Then, if someone puts the time, I'll put it into the WhatsApp group. That takes 2 seconds, literally.
All right. Well, let's see. Shabbat was over at 6:03 according to the bulletin. So why don't we begin? People will join. Okay. 24a at the top, the third line from the top. And we continue to discuss rules of Elut. The rabbis were sitting before Rav Papa and quoting Shmuel. A mourner who had sex during his Avelut period, and presumably we seem to be talking about on Shabbat, Chayav Misa. There's a dispute about doing this on Shabbat. This is something that's done in private. So on Shabbat, the public expressions of mourning are suspended, right. Private ones. So Shmuel is this quotation of Shmuel is of the opinion that I think Chayav Misa says that you're liable for death. The death penalty is being hyperbolic, but basically it's even though it's something done in private, it's still forbidden. I'm on Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, like, wait a minute, what's this punishable by death? It's forbidden. Now that's what he said. When we shmeid Rabbi Yochanan and quoting Rabbi Yochanan, and it was quoted and said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that when the rabbis were sitting there before Rav Papa, not in the name of Shmuel. And if you heard something in Shmuel's name, you must have heard the following. Rav Tachlifa bar Avimei Amar Shmuel. Rav Tachlifa said in Shmuel's name, Avel shelo para v'shelo piram chayav misa. A mourner who didn't let his hair grow or didn't tear his clothes, he is liable for the death penalty. Shanamar, what's the source? Rashechem al tifro v'idechem lo tifro muvalo samusa. So this is the first kind of bizarre, I think, to my mind, is kind of bizarre. I should preface by saying that there are several bizarre things in today's Gemara that I really have a hard time getting behind, but as we will see. But this quote is about when Nadav and Avihu were killed, so the command to the rest of the family, to Elazar and Itamar, was do not do these signs of mourning. Let your hair grow or tear your clothes, and you won't die. Okay. Now the implication that the Gemara is taking here is the opposite of the one I would expect. It's so who dies? Somebody else, not you, but somebody else who didn't do these signs of mourning. Who's the somebody else? A different mourner, right? So if you the person who does die is the person who now the clear meaning of the pasuk is that do this lest you die. Right, like if you do this, right? But we're taking kind of the opposite look at it. So that is what Rav Papa corrected his students and said, "This is if you're quoting Shmuel, must be what Shmuel said, according to Rav Tachlifa." Hanan, we're 24a at the top. About 8 lines down now. Amar Rafram Bar Papa. Rafram Bar Papa said, Tana be'evel Rabasi. We were taught in Evel Rabasi, which is Masachet, often called Masachet Smachot, because it deals with laws of mourning. Avel asur l'shamesh mitaso b'me'evlo. You can't have sex during your mourning, the 7 days during the Shiva. One person did so. The Shamtu Chazirim Eskaviyaso. And pigs kind of stole his, when he died, his body was desecrated by pigs. Interestingly, Rashi says either his whole body or maybe it means his penis, right? Which is what he erred with, right, by having sex. So in other words, like this was a sign that was not a good idea for him to do during his Avelus. Amar Shmuel, Shmuel says, Pechaz Chova. This acronym of Pechaz Zayin, these are mourning practices that are required on Shabbos, and Natar Rishus. And these other 3, we're going to spell these out in a minute. These other 3 are optional mourning practices on Shabbos. So what is required on Shabbos? Priyas Harosh, uncovering your head. So there was a tradition, or there was a rule that a mourner would wrap their head, as we'll see in a particular way. Chazaras Kerala Charav, turning your shirt so that where you've torn it, you can turn it to the back. You do that on Shabbos rather than wear it in the front. And Zakiva Samita, and sitting on proper chairs, or turning your bed back over the right side up, that you have to do on Shabbos. What is optional on Shabbos? Natar, Ni'ilas Asandal, wearing shoes, Tashmi Shamita, sex, Rechitzas Yadayim V'Raglayim B'Chavim Arvis, and washing your hands and feet at the end of the day. Those practices are optional on Shabbos. Rav Amar, but Rav says, Af Priyas Harosh Rishus. Even uncovering your head is also optional. It's not required to uncover your head. Shmuel. So according to Shmuel, Maishna Nisa Sandal Rishus, why is wearing proper shoes, leather shoes, why is that optional to do on Shabbos? Lav Koli Alma Avide Desaime Masanayu, because not everyone is used to wearing their shoes on Shabbos, right? So in other words, if you wear shoes or don't wear shoes, you'll fit in with everybody else. Nobody, it's not like you're flaunting your mourner status in public. Other people who are not mourners also don't wear shoes on Shabbos.
What do you mean flaunting?
Pardon me?
Flaunting, like you're showing off or something, or what?
In the sense I meant that, like, you can't do mourning practices that are public, right? So not wearing your shoes isn't a public mourning practices, because other regular people who are not mourners also don't wear shoes. So people will look at you not wearing shoes. They're not going to assume that you're doing a mourning practice. They're assuming you're not wearing shoes. Yossel is also not wearing shoes. It doesn't demonstrate a stance of mourning on Shabbos. That's what I meant. Okay, so if that's the case, Priyas Harosh Name, uncovering the head, right? Not everybody walks around with uncovered heads. Some people cover their heads, some people don't cover their heads, right? Not everybody uncovers their head on Shabbos. So if you leave your head covered, other people also leave their head covered. So it's just like wearing shoes. It shouldn't be considered a public demonstration of mourning on Shabbos. So the answer is Shmuel Tame. Shmuel is consistent. Yomer Shmuel, Kol Kerash Eno Rishas Chimum Eno Kera. Any tearing of the clothes that is not made at the time of, like, the most emotional time, like the most intense time of mourning, like that's the proper time to tear your clothes. And and any wrapping of the head that is not like the Arab headdress wrap, that's not considered wrapping. So in other words, there's a particular way of wrapping your head that indicates a mourning practice. Okay, so sure, other people are walking around with their heads covered, but they don't have it wrapped in this particular way. So if you uncover your head and don't. If you were to keep your head covered in this particular way, that would be a demonstration of mourning in public on Shabbos. Machler of Nachman Adube de Dikna. And Rav Nachman showed how this is done by he wrapped his head up in this particular way. He like wrapped his head all the way down to translates here, the hollows of his cheeks. Okay, so I don't know, I can't tell you what this looked like exactly, but there was a particular way that indicated that you were in mourning. And so if you did that particular thing on Shabbos, that would be a public demonstration of mourning on Shabbos. That's why Shmuel said that it is not permitted. However, wearing shoes, it still remains. Like, some people wear shoes, some people don't wear shoes. So pick what you want. It doesn't matter.
Are we assuming they're sitting Shiva?
Yeah. So you're sitting Shiva on Shabbos, but on Shabbos, there's no public demonstration of mourning, right? So can you go around without shoes, without leather shoes? Yes, you can, because nobody will recognize that as a sign of mourning, right? Yes, it is one of the mourning practices, but it's not exclusive to mourners, right? Let's say, half the other people in the street are also not wearing shoes. So you not wearing shoes is not the demonstration, dafka of a mourning practice. Whereas according to Shmuel,
yeah.
Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rav Yochanan, Rav Yaakov said, Rav Yochanan, Lo shanu el she'en lo min alayim b'raglav. That's only if you don't have shoes at all. Aval yesh lo min alayim b'raglav min alav mochichin alav. If you have shoes, then your shoes do demonstrate that you're not observing mourning on Shabbos, and therefore you don't have to uncover your head. So in other words, there's two kind of clothing demonstrations of mourning. One is wrapping the head and the other is not wearing shoes. So if you're wearing shoes, you can keep your head wrapped, because people look at you and say, is he demonstrating mourning? No, look, he's wearing shoes, right? Mourners don't wear shoes, so he's okay. His head is wrapped. Okay, so his head is wrapped. Other people's head are wrapped also. So he doesn't accept this. Apparently, doesn't accept this. There's only one way for a mourner to wrap his head, right? He's just saying that as long as there's one recognizable thing about you that is a rejection of a mourning practice, or not rejection, but a not doing a mourning practice. So if you're doing some other mourning practice, that's okay.
Are you considered a mourner on Shabbat, or you are a mourner, but you can't show you're a mourner? That's the idea? Or you're not a mourner?
I'm not, like, what would be the difference?
The
difference with private demonstrations of mourning, right? Like,
right.
Yeah. So that is the case, right?
You wouldn't go to like a simcha, on like a big bar mitzvah party on Shabbos, right?
Yeah, so now you're talking about current practice.
Right, so I'm saying you are a mourner. You take off the practices.
I think that's correct, yeah. Okay, so now we're going to investigate the other statement. Like, the real tearing of the clothes is at the time of the most intense grief. So presumably, like when the death occurs, or maybe at the burial, I think that the common practice today that I've seen is that it's at the gravesite where the mourners will tear their clothes.
Yes.
Taken. So v'ha'amrle Shmuel l'Shmuel nach nafshe Rav, but when they told Shmuel that Rav had died, Karl le tresar mane, he tore through 12 shirts, right? Now, clearly he wasn't wearing 12 shirts at once, right? It's like every time he put on a shirt after he heard about Rav's death, he would tear it. So that contradicts this idea that it's only at the time of maximum grief, right? Amar, why did he do this? He said, Azal Gavra Dahava Mistafina, that the only person I was afraid of, intellectually, has left the world. So Amrulay Rabbi Yochanan Nach Nafshi Rav Chanina. This is we're really focusing on Shmuel because that's who we're interrogating here. But the same thing happened with Rabbi Yochanan when they told him that Rav Chanina died. Karalei Tleisar Itztalei Motza. He tore 13 silk shirts. Amar, he said, He said the same thing. The only person I was afraid of is gone. So anyway, the question is on Shmuel. Like, how can he tear his clothes 12 times if he's saying that the only time you tear your clothes is at the peak of your grief? Well, answer is Shane Rabban, and it's different for rabbis when you're more in a rabbi. The Kevan, the Kol Shata, Mad Kuresh Matayu, because since they're always being mentioned, like he's always being quoted, like Rav said this, Rav said that. So every time you hear it, it's like, oh my God, Rav died, right? It's like there are many peaks of grief because he's always being mentioned. So Kashashki Mudane. So then each one of those is like the maximum point of grief, So here I have to question, like, why are rabbis different, right? The same thing could be said of anybody. Like, you always have reminders, especially when someone has just died. Everything, I imagine, like a lot of things remind you of his death. So it doesn't really explain to me why the Gemara would say, well, it's different for a rabbi or for a teacher.
Right. I mean
I was expecting it to say, well, because your teacher is like the one who gives you Torah, and there's an additional element to the grief or something. I don't know.
He was afraid of him or something. Or that's the person. It's more than just a teacher. It was sort of like,
someone who's really your, someone who is kind of uppermost in your mind. But what about a regular person's parent?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Ravin said to Rava, Amar Talmida Rav Amram, your student Rav Amram said, that this was taught in the Brisa. Avil Kol Shiva Karo Lafan. For during the period of Shiva, the tear in your shirt should be in the front. If you want to tear your shirt, you can change your shirt, and just make sure your shirt is always torn. Like, put on a fresh shirt, but it should also be torn. You should also tear it. For Shabbos, on Shabbos, what you do is you put on the same shirt, and you turn the shirt so that the tear is in the back. And if you have to change your shirt on Shabbos, you take off the torn shirt. So you put on another shirt. Let's say you don't have another shirt that's torn, so you don't tear it on Shabbos. Okay, but anyway, this contradicts Shmuel, right? Because the idea is that on Monday, if you put on a new shirt, then you have to tear that shirt. Isn't that more than one tearing? Shmuel said there's only one tearing. So Kitanyahi b'chvod avivino. That applies to a parent, right? So there's as we've seen before, there's an extra dimension of mourning practice when it comes to a parent as opposed to another close relative. So we can say that for a parent, there's you can have multiple tears as opposed to another relative. Now, Osan Korin, Misachin or in Misachin. Can you sew up the tear after the Shiva is over? The father of Rav Oshia and Bar Kapara argued about it. One said yes, the other said no. Who said what? We can figure out that the father of Oshaya was the one who said you cannot repair it. The Amar of Oshaya and Misachin, because we have this quoted directly. Rav Oshaya, the son, said that you don't sew up the tear. Miman Shmile. So where do you think he got that from? Lav Me'avor. Certainly he got it from his father. So Mar says, well, not necessarily. Mibar Kapara Rabbi Shmile. Maybe he got it from his teacher. He's not necessarily practicing like his father. He could be maybe Bar Kapara, who argued with his father, was his teacher, and he sided with his teacher, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about, is how did the tradition get passed down, right? If your father had a tradition and your teacher taught differently, what should you do? Whose opinion should you adopt? Interesting question. And here the Gemara says, it seems like it says could be either. Amar Rava says, in the privacy of your home, you should still wear the torn shirt. Rav Yosef, the Parisley Sudra Reshe. Abaye found Rav Yosef, and again we're talking about on Shabbos. So it's you're at home in private, but you should still wear the torn shirt. So Abaye found Rav Yosef on Shabbos as a mourner, and he was covering his head. Say, while in his own house. So Abaye says to him, don't you agree that there's no mourning practice on Shabbos? So yeah, so Rav Yochanan is what Rav Yochanan says. No, yes, the things that are done in private, those you continue to observe on Shabbos. So I'm in my own home. I'll keep my head covered. Thank you very much.
This contradicts what we had before. So in private, you should keep the mourning practices.
Yes.
But I thought it said that you could do tashmish.
Right. That was a dispute. So there's clearly different opinions here. The Gemara seems to be concluding that you do continue the private practices on Shabbos, but that was disputed before. Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Mishachar beis hamikdash atzeres Shabbos." Okay, now we're back to the Mishnah. So remember that the holiday interrupts the Shiva, right? Now, does it apply? The Mishnah had a three-way argument about how does it apply? So Pesach and Sukkot, which are full-fledged 7-day holidays, they definitely interrupt. And what about Shavuos? So one opinion in the Mishnah was that Shavuos is like the other holidays. Why? Because the period to offer the Karban Chagiga, the Chagiga sacrifice, the festival sacrifice, was a 7-day period, even on Shavuos, which is only itself 1 day, but it triggered a 7-day period during which you could offer the holiday sacrifice. Okay. Mm-hmm. However, once the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed and there's no more sacrifices, then there's no way in which Shavuos is a 7-day holiday. It's a 1-day holiday, so now it's more like Shabbos. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, you treat it like Shabbos. Amar Rav Gidol Bar Menashe Rav Gidol said, in the name of Shmuel, halacha k'Rav Gamliel. We rule like Rabbi Gamliel, which was, which was Rabbi Gamliel's just for a second. Anybody remember? Pages in the art scroll.
Probably means it does interrupt it, right? I mean,
there was a three-way route. I covered a lot of ground since this was. Nope, Mishnah. I must have missed it. Anybody save me here?
Are we looking for a Mishnah? The last Mishnah?
We're currently analyzing. Here we are. Elu Kosfin, that wasn't it.
It's in 19, I think.
Yes, 19a.
Right.
Oh yeah, so Rabbi Gamliel says all the 1-day holidays are like our regular holidays, and they interrupt Shiva. Okay, and that is what the Gemara says now that that's how we rule. Because and some apply Rav Gidol's statement to the following, not to this dispute in our Mishnah, but a different dispute. What do you do with a newborn who dies? So for the first 30 days, you carry the body to the cemetery, just without any tachrishin, without a coffin, right? You just carry it. And bury it directly in the grave. You don't need like a whole gathering of people to record honor to the deceased. 1 woman and 2 men is fine. Avalobi Shechad Shtei Nashim. You're going to have three people. It shouldn't be one man and two women, presumably for reasons of seclusion, right? The man can't be secluded. Presumably, the cemetery is in the middle of nowhere. So you need three people, but if it's a mixed, if it's mixed company, it should be one woman and two men. Abba Shalom says, Af Be'ish Echad Shtei Nashim. Even one man and two women is fine because, like, come on, you're on a funeral of a baby, right?
Really?
We're not going to worry about people being about mixed sex seclusion. Beinom din of the shura, and there's no practice of the shura where you comfort the mourners as they return from the grave in a row. There's no bracha, as we've seen before. There's a bracha for the avelim to make. I don't know if that's still done. And the mourners, the comforting of the mourners doesn't take place. This is for a baby less than 30 days old. Ben shloshim yosef b'bluskuma. Once the baby is 30 days old before it dies, then
is that the bracha of Dayan Emet?
I don't think so. I don't.
We've seen the text of the bracha. I
don't know what bracha they're talking about. Actually, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we've seen this before. I think we had the text for it, or at least in the notes. Let's see, is it in here perhaps? No, it's not in here. Like I said, I don't know that this is still practiced. Look it up in Ksuba stuff, Daf Ches. Excuse me.
Ketubot.
Yeah, Rashi, the reference. Ben Shloshim, a 30-day-old or more infant who dies, Yosef ben Bluskama. You don't carry the body directly; you carry it in a coffin, in a box. Or you don't merit load Bluskama, and you tell us because if we're not talking about a small, like a smaller box that you can carry, one person carries on their shoulder, but it's more of a sign of respect. It should be a coffin that has to be carried, but in the hands by at least two people. So this is apparently giving more respect to the deceased. The Yomin all of the Shura, and you do have the line of Michon Avelim after the funeral. The Yomin law of Birkos Avelim, you do the whole thing. You do the bracha. You do the people come and console the mourners. Now, ben Shnei Masar Chodesh, and once if it's a 12-month-old or older baby who dies, Yosef b'mita, then you carry the body on a bier, right? Like on a, I don't know, in my mind it looks kind of like those army stretchers, right? That this is apparently a greater sign of respect to carry the deceased on a bier.
Like they do in Israel.
Do they? I can't remember the last time I was at a funeral in Israel, but okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen a couple of them on Zoom this year. So yeah, they have a stretcher with the body wrapped in the tallis.
Okay.
It doesn't say if you are a mourner after this, right? I mean.
Oh well, it's presumed because over 30 days you already do the regular mourning practice. So 12 months, I would imagine.
Well, do we know? Okay. I mean, how do we know about the 30 days? Is it?
Oh, that was the previous statement, right? The 30 days. Then you.
Okay. We're assuming that all that means that you're sitting, that you're a mourner after that.
Yeah. So a 12-month or more baby. Yosef B'mita. Right? Yeah, you go on a beer. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Hu ben Shana ve'var ben Shnayim, Hu ben Shnayim ve'var ben Shana Yosef B'mita. Rabbi Kiva says, what is the criteria for being carried on a beer? It's more like being two, but it's like either he looks like he's two, like he's the size of a 2-year-old, or he's a 2-year-old even if he's like only the size of a 1-year-old. That's the criteria. Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar Omer. Shimon says, once if you've got a child being carried on a bier, then it's like he gets the full respect. Like people should join the procession and so on. Like the public should participate in in the morning, in the, not mourning like the close relatives, but they should participate in visiting the Avelim and so on, and accompanying the body. Eino Yotzit Mita, but if it's a child who's younger than that, who's not being taken out on a bier, Ein Rabim Hasidim Alav, then the public doesn't have to get involved. If it was a child who was like well known, right? Like, I imagine that children who can't walk, well, it's not even a question of walking. It's like if he was a person that you knew, that people knew, then the public should get involved.
Like a famous person's son or something, or a famous person's child?
Sorry, say again?
Like a famous person's child or something, or is that?
That's not. No, my reading of it is that like it's a kid that's around the neighborhood, right? The kid goes with his mother to the supermarket.
Oh, we're talking about a kid who's over 1 year old now, or
yeah, like if it's during a pandemic and person you could have a baby that's a year old and nobody's ever seen the baby in public because nobody goes out, then nobody knows the kid. So, so the public is not required to participate in the funeral, but if it's the kid's always out with the parents and at the grocery store and shul and whatever, then the public should get involved. I mean, this is also strange to me because like if it's a matter of honoring the deceased, right, and honoring the Tzelem Elokim and so on, then like so I understand you can make a distinction between a newborn that dies shortly after birth, right, but like we don't make the distinction of adults. If a person is a hermit, right, and never goes out and he dies, then the public is still, people still should get the full treatment, right, if possible.
If it's just Tzelem Elokim, why would there be a difference for an infant?
Yeah, why should there be a difference for an infant? I don't understand.
No, you say you understand if there's I'm saying about a newborn. What a newborn has the same Tzelem Elokim as an infant.
Right. So I think that because so I'm thinking specifically about the 30 days thing, right? Since we kind of take the stance, as I understand it, that until 30 days you haven't really kind of secured your hold on life, right? It's like almost closer to a stillbirth than a person's a full-fledged person passing away. I mean, it's how it feels to the parent. I couldn't even begin to imagine. That's not something I can comment on. But the idea that, up till a certain age, the presence of this person, of this infant, never really took hold somehow in the world, I kind of can do that. Between a month and 12 months, I mean, that's a little harder to accept.
Well, a Pidyon Ben is a month, right? A
I'm sorry?
Ben?
Pidyon
Ben is a month, right?
Yeah. Well, that is prescribed by the Torah without comment as to why. Now you could suppose that maybe that's the reason. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not even comfortable making that statement because, as I say, how I wouldn't even begin to try to plumb the emotions of someone who had to live through a terrible event like that.
Right. Yeah, but obviously there's obviously there's 30 days must mean something if I don't know. 30 days is a common period in halacha. So for example, Nazir, right, and we derive other things. In fact, the whole shloshim idea comes from the Nazir, right? The whole 30 days of right. That's a good point.
So, like I said, there's a lot of difficult things in today's Gemara that
I thought shloshim came from Joseph.
You are no. Wait a second. How so? I think maybe there were two.
The Nazir is like something actually that we quote, but I think that it was something that was actually not 100% sure that it was really coming from there, if I remember correctly.
Okay, that rings a bell. I taught that daf like in 1 year.
Either Yosef or Aaron had 30 days of mourning in the Torah.
Moshe had 30 days. Was it also Aaron? It was also Aaron.
Moshe, there's no mourning. That he dies at the last pasuk.
Not the last.
No, I think no, I think we actually hear about Moshe's the time that we actually that they grieved for him.
Why don't I have a chumash next to me? That's who has a chumash?
The chumash in this room has been appropriated.
Ah, we are bereft.
I think I used it to read this morning.
Yeah.
Elchanan,
Well, I just looked it up on the internet. It says that they mourned Moshe for 30 days until
30
the
days?
European mourning was over.
Okay.
But the Nazir doesn't cut his hair, right? And that's where we got the mourning practice of not cutting the hair for 30 days.
Yeah, so maybe that's where the practices for Shloshim come from. But I think that the time period is I mean, I don't based on those psukim.
Yeah, but we digress. Umahin behesed.
That's like the definition of Gemara.
Yeah, that's right. Umahin behesed. What about eulogy for an infant? Rabbi Meir b'shem Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Meir says, "Aniyim b'nei shalosh, ashirim b'nei chamesh." This passage is coming up. I really have a hard time with. If you're poor, then you eulogize from the age of 3. But if you're rich, you only eulogize from the age of 5, implying that there's more of an impact. The death of a poor man's child is more of an impact. Economically, I could kind of see that, right? Especially in an agrarian economy. Although, like, a 3-year-old isn't going to do a lot of productive work, right? Neither is a 5-year-old, for that matter. At least none of the 5-year-olds I know.
What is this saying? Under this age, you wouldn't mourn?
So a poor man's child, you eulogize from the age of 3.
Oh, for eulogies.
Yeah.
Oh, hesped. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Meir, or maybe in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, Aniyim b'nei chamesh, ashirim b'nei sheish. Now the difference is 5 and 6. Poor people's children eulogize from the age of 5, and rich people's children from the age of 6. B'nei zakenim kivnei aniyim. But if you have an elderly couple that lose a young child, an older couple, then or a parent, then it's the same rule. So it's a bigger impact, presumably because they're not going to have more children if they're older. Okay, there's nothing to look forward to. What this has to do with eulogizing, I'm not sure. Presumably the eulogy gives you like some measure of comfort, or maybe not even comfort, but an expression of grief, right? So maybe there's more grief for the there's more of a need for that expression in the case of older parents who are probably not going to have any more children.
Is the Gemara giving us the minimum required or the maximum, or just like what's minhag?
The minimum, because obviously adults get eulogized, right? So this is like, from what age of death do you start? Like, what's the youngest that you eulogize for? You start 3 or 5 or 6 and onwards, right? So obviously a 10-year-old is going to get eulogized.
But in terms of the amount of mourning, you can do more.
This is just a hesped we're talking about, I think.
Yeah, this particular statement.
Right, but before we were talking about like the coffin and like that,
yeah,
that was the maximum. You can't do more, or that was the minimum. You must do at least that.
Presumably, it's the minimum. In other words, for a very young infant, you don't even do. You don't even carry him in anything. You just carry the body directly.
But you could do more, right? You could use an aron. You could afford the infant more honor.
I guess it's like you're not required to. But yeah, that sounds right. You could certainly read it that way. I mean, I don't know that contemporary in that today. I think there might be different burial practices for under 30 days, but beyond that, I feel like, and I don't know for sure, but I feel like James says, you do the regular, you bury the child in a coffin, and like a regular funeral.
Yeah, I knew somebody who's in Israel whose infant died under 30 days, and I think they did exactly this. They just that evening they buried him.
Uh-huh.
Rav Stephen lost 2 babies that way.
Those were stillbirths, or
No, it wasn't stillbirth.
No, it was at 5 months. I mean,
I don't know.
5 months of gestation. It was the babies were not born.
right. I thought. Yeah,
I think they were born. I think at
And
least one of them was
survived.
born alive.
And survived less than 30 days.
Yeah, they died. They died the same day or within days. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we should know from such things.
Oh God. Oh boy.
Okay, other comments before we go on? Dara Rav Anani Bar Sasan of Pischa Devei Nisia. Rav Anani Bar Sasan, kind of an unusual name. He taught at the door of the Nasi's house. Yom Echad Lifnei Atzeres Vatzeres. If you have a mourning, you have a period of mourning the day before Shavuos, and then Shavuos itself passes. Harikan Arbasar. You've got 14 days of the Shloshim have been completed. Okay, because the Shiva ends, so we count that according to Rav Anan as 7 days, and then the holiday itself counts 7-day holiday, even though it's Shavuos, as we saw that there's still an opinion that there's a 7-day kind of equivalent period. So 14 days are gone. So basically, the day after Shavuos, you start 16 more days of the Shloshim. Rami heard this, and he was like, "I don't think so." Amar, he said, "Atu didehi." Is that he's like, not that he was disagreeing. He's saying like, you didn't hear this, like this is your own teaching. This is Rabbi Lazar Amar Oshayahi. This was already taught, before you by Rabbi Lazar in the name of Rabbi Oshaya. There's Rabbi Yitzchak Nafla Akila Deresh Chulu. It's a similar story. Rabbi Yitzchak taught on the porch of the Yom Echad Lifnei Atzeres Vatzeres Harikan Arbasar. Thing Shomer of Sheshis for the Amar Ati today, your own rule, Rabbi Lazar Amar Rabbi Shai. This is the rule of Rabbi Lazar in the name of Rabbi Shai. And what is the source? The Amar Rabbi Lazar Amar Rabbi Shai. The price of it presents that opinion. How do you know that that you have this 7-day period for the Chagiga to be brought starting on Shavuot? Because summing up the holidays, it states an equivalence between these 3 holidays: Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Just as Pesach, you have a 7-day period to bring the Chagiga sacrifice. Same. That's what it teaches us by putting all those 3 in the same pasuk. Adbere Rav Papa Rav Avia Sava Vidarash. Rav Papa was leading Rav Avia, the old Rav Avia, and he was teaching him. Yom Echad Lifnei Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah, Harikan Arbasar. Same rule for Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is only 1 day, but we're going to count it as a full holiday, just like Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, or like Pesach and Sukkot, and you count that like takes 14 days of the Shloshim. Ramina.
Sukkot.
Pardon me? Yeah, good question. Right?
Rosh Hashanah is Sukkot.
And don't forget Yom Kippur, right? Yom Kippur also interrupts the Velos.
Right.
So it's a very good question. So it's unclear how this plays out. It seems like a theoretical rule, but it is kind of strange that they wouldn't take note of the fact that Yom Kippur is coming, and that will get rid of the rest of the days.
So if that happens after Yom Kippur, you're not considered in Shloshim anymore?
I feel like, and again, I don't have much experience here, thank goodness, but I feel like that we don't cut down the shloshim. Like and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but if you become an avel on the, on the 13th of Nisan, then it's 30 days later that your shloshim is over. We don't remove days from the shloshim.
I don't know.
I thought that's the that's the whole daf last week, that the first holidays would cut off Shavuot, the first holidays would cut off Shiva, and the last days would cut off Shloshim.
Right, they cut them off, but here we're saying that it just reduces the number of days of shloshim by 7, and you still have to complete the shloshim, but not a full 30 days. Like you're given credit for 7 days, even though
shloshim would end after 14 days.
Yom Kippur is actually considered as Shabbat, so it actually counts.
Right.
It doesn't interrupt. It's like it's part of it.
Oh, Yom Kippur doesn't interrupt. Okay, well, the opinion we're dealing with here says that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur we throw together, right? Because they're only one-day holidays, right? And unlike Shavuos, there's no Korban Chagiga that extends for 7 days because they're not lumped in with Pesach and Sukkot, right? So since they're only one-day holidays, right? It's this third opinion that says that we're gonna knock off 7 days, even though it's only a one-day holiday. But the whole idea that you knock off days, right? So I understand, like if Sukkot comes along, right, during or let's go with Pesach because there's no other holidays around there. Pesach comes along, so there's actually 7 days where you don't practice morning practices, right, because it's Pesach, right? So yeah, you deducted 7 days, but 7 days have elapsed. In the case of Rosh Hashanah or Shavuos, 7 days have not elapsed. So what is this idea that you tick off 7 days even though they haven't, occurred?
Oh, I see. They're just saying any holiday equals 7 days.
Yeah. Like I say, I feel like this is not the way we practice today, but
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm Ravina. So Ravina says Hilchach, therefore, Yom Echad Lifnei Hachag, B'Chag U'Shmini Shelo, Harikan Esrim B'Echad Yom. So what about Sukkot? You have Sukkot takes off 7 days, or you cancel the Shiva, so that's 7 days, and then the occurrence of the holiday counts as 7 days, and then Shmini Atzeres comes along a week later, and that counts as in further 7 days. Okay, so in the space of a week, basically, or in the space of 8 days, you've knocked off 21 days of your shloshim. Okay, so that's like the most extensive reduction you can have. Although maybe Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, as you noted before. Ravina equal Surah de Pras. Ravina traveled to Surah on the Euphrates. Amalei Rav Chaviva Misura de Pras Ravina. Rav Chaviva, who lived there, told him, Amar Mar, Yom Echad Lefnei Rosh Hashanah Reit Kan Arbasa. Did you say that Rosh Hashanah knocks off 14 days? Amalei, Ravina says, Ana Mistabra Karavan Gamliel Hudamina. I don't think that. What I think is more logical is to follow Rabbi Gamliel. That Rosh Hashanah is no different than the other holidays. So it's not clear exactly what he's saying. Is he saying that he rules like Rabbi Gamliel, that Rosh Hashanah is the same as Pesach or Sukkot? And as you noted before, Yom Kippur comes along anyway, so the Shloshim is going to be over by Yom Kippur in any event. Or he might just be kind of hedging here and saying like, yeah, I might have said that, but really I think Rabbi Gamliel was right. I really don't know what there are different opinions about what his statement means here. Okay, so we'll stop here and pick this up at the Mishnah tomorrow.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dov. Shavua Tov.
Thank you.
Shavua Tov. Thank you.
Any word from Ellie?
Yeah.
I haven't
What's
heard
happening with his? Any word from Ellie? What's happening with his daughter?
So she had another round of chemo last week, and she's home. She's resting. He said that it went well.
Uh-huh. Okay, thanks
And
for the,
what's the, she has how many, do you know how many rounds she has or what happens
No.
after?
No, I don't
Okay.
know, but it seems like it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
So,
No. Thank you.
Proton, everybody.
all right,
Tov.
so.